Disclaimer: the information and education material contained herein is meant to promote the general understanding and dialogue of GAN's processing. Such information is not meant or intended to serve as a substitute for a healthcare professional's clinical training, experience, or judgment. For patients and individuals, such information is not to be a substitute for professional medical, therapeutic, or healthcare advice or counseling. For medical issues or concerns, including decisions about medications and other treatments, readers, viewers, listeners should always consult their physician or, in serious cases, seek immediate assistance from emergency personnel. Prescription information, procedures, and use of medical devices information should be undertaken only by properly trained and certified medical personnel. We specifically disclaim any warranties, express or implied, including implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. Such information is provided, as is, and is believed to be accurate at the time of its publishing, but it is the viewer's job to evaluate the accuracy of any information found in this presentation. Every case presented is of their own experience, applied by themselves for themselves, and it applies to their case only. Every person experiencing health problems should seek professional medical advice and consult their course of treatment with a doctor. The processes of plasma balancing described herein are a natural process which supports the body but does not replace medical advice or therapies one is already subject to.
It's a beautiful Sunday afternoon.
And thank you for sharing your knowledge and for being present with us, Alex. We do appreciate you.
Well, today there are a lot of excuses for not being here. And it's not that we need more excuses, it's just that any excuse sometimes will do. Let's see if I can get this thing going. 1 moment, please. I just have to, we're almost there. We're almost there. Just a moment here. I'm going to do this. One of these days I'll get it right, Mark.
No, take your time. We're very patient. We're learning patience. And as we know, Rome wasn't built in a day. And the Dome of Peace will take some time. As he said, this is not a day job. So if you're faint of heart and you want to see it yesterday, we're gonna have to all work on this together to bring that change. And as the knowledge seekers become more enlightened and create that spark, it'll cover the entire dome of this planet and humanity.
Well, that is the plan, isn't it?
I think it is. But it's not a wave of a magic wand, and I think we'd like to see that. But it's going to take a little bit of time and work to complete this process. It's nearly completed, and it's closer than anyone could imagine, even those in the universal community. So we turn it over to you for more enlightenment, Alex, if you're ready.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for leading the pack here. As I said before, the Keshe American Knowledge Team is a very important meeting because we follow the Knowledge Seekers Workshop on Thursdays and then the Powerful Brazilian meeting on Fridays. And as we try and assist people from all around the world to understand this a whole lot better. So we continue. This is the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute Teachings on Plasma Science. We're discussing basic transmission. Today's subject is perpendicular motion. And my name is Alexander. I am from Canada. And it's December the 24th, 2023. So welcome, one and all, for investing the time on for what is for many people around the world a very special day. They call it the holiday season. Let's remember something. Cancer, wars, hardship never takes a whole day. And so neither does life. And that's what this is all about. We're talking about basic transmission as an extension of the basic series. And today's subject is perpendicular motion, following what we discussed, the x-axis dimension and perpendicular rotation. So we have to understand that in the Knowledge Seekers workshops, we're over a decade in transmission, over 6,000 hours of teaching. And that's just on the part of Mr. Cash. I'm into my 6th year. And it's been a long journey. There are many others who have come before us, and we're all part of this team, and it's a continuation. And some members leave and other ones come. And it's all part of growing, learning, developing. It's all part of creation. But somewhere along the line, we have not fully understood. And this is one of the reasons we invest so much time into teaching. So do we have this much time to invest? And so the answer is, of course, no. So we try and distill it down. And with all these teachings, we distill it down through a review session that we just finished. And now we're continuing beyond that because things have changed. We found out that we still have this hesitancy, what we call the donkey hesitancy, because it's the lowest energy state. And so, you know, rolling is faster than walking, and riding a horse is faster than walking also. And so we have to understand that faster is in the eyes of the beholder, just like beauty. And so what does it mean to be faster? And how fast is fast? How big is large? And how important is important? So the thing is that this is a decision that we cannot abdicate. This is not something that we can pass on to others and say, well, you decide. We all have to individually decide. But the truth of the matter is we have decided. And the proof is that you were born. And if you think that is really basic, it's fundamental. And so all of these descriptions on how we were born were put together in the books by Maritaba Kolikesh, such as book number 1, The Universal Order of Creation of Matter. And then book number 2, The Structure of the Light. And then book number 3, The Origin of the Universe, which is kind of confusing because maybe that should be number 1. But physics has always been confusing. And so here we are, we have to go through this transmutation preparation. And so this is what's in the forecast coming for the new year. Looks like we're going to have 6 months of preparation. If you want to learn a skill, you have to practice. I think everybody understands that. And one skill that we haven't learned is to bring peace on earth. And then, of course, at Christmas time, this is one of the most important things. Peace on earth and goodwill to men. Well, one day a year is not enough. As we founded 305, One Nation, One Planet, One Race for World Peace series hosted by Rick Raymond. World peace is very difficult to achieve. And especially when you find that those who position themselves in terms of power and authority find out that in actuality they're impotent. And so as we search for outer space, we're trying to figure out how we're moving on this plasma highway, because we still want to get to that pie in the sky. That hasn't changed. And all we have is this little tiny red dot in the bottom right-hand corner we call Earth space, which is part of our universe. But what about the rest? Why are we so satisfied with so little? And I think this is the problem, isn't it? We always go for the least when the abundance is right there for us, right there. So we find that the plasma highway involves a lot of physics, a lot of knowledge, a lot of understanding how energy moves around. But we're still having difficulty with the transmission highway. But this has offered a new opportunity to understand something that has been appeared in the review series. We try to differentiate between the plasma science and the physical science, and to understand the difference between the physicality and the non-tangibility. How to identify each and what it means. It was very difficult to explain that. And as we're all groping for ways and means to do that, we're trying to find maybe alternatives or just in a different manner, just so maybe someone can relate more, or someone can relate better, or someone can teach more or teach better. But also another dimension has been added, and that is this transmission dimension. Because when we're looking at the universal embodiment, we had these serious questions. Is the speed of light the fastest transmission? And is it true that the faster you go, the bigger you get? And so we see that there are different ways to encompass this Earth space embodiment. We have different modes of transmission. We don't even understand how we got here. And we go through a whole lifetime not understanding. And we have the benefit of history, and we still don't understand. We don't understand the creation of the universe. And so we try to look at the universal order of creation of matters, where energy is always in motion. But it comes together. And so when it comes together, you see that all things work in combination. So as soon as you say that, you have to decide, well, where did it come from? And now that it's here, where is it going? And in which dimension? And how many dimensions are there? And so the fact of the matter is that energy is always positive. So when we put a charge on that energy, it's to indicate the direction of the motion. And so that's what we're talking about today, is the transmission of energy in motion. And we see this manifest in the cups of life. And let's remember, they weren't the cups of the pandemic, because life is all of life, all the time. So this gave us an opportunity to investigate our inner space, that nebulous point within our core space that was representative of our emotional strength. And how strong is your emotional strength? Can you measure it? And so one of the ways maybe it was through this GANS radiance manifestation. So when we made these cups of life, we were creating CO2 GANs, calcium GANs, zinc GANs, copper GANs, water GANs, and amino acid GANs. But more interestingly, some are creating more than others. And why is that so different? What is going on? So we have to figure out how this energy is being transmitted. And so we're focusing right now on the x-axis transmission. And we discussed how we can slide along. And so in Canada, we like to play hockey. And it's spread around the world. And people understand that a flat puck slides on a flat ice surface. And so we can move by sliding. But that motion is perpendicular to the ground. And if we put a rotation on it, we find that the motion pushes us into the air, like a helicopter. And so we can hover along. We can hover in the air, or we can still slide along. We can slide on the water. But we have to rotate another 90 degrees, so we have a flat airboat that slides on the flat Everglades surface. The Everglades being that preserve in Florida. But the motion is still perpendicular to the rotation, so that the fan is on the back and it pushes you forward. And you just skim along on the water. Because if you had a propeller in the water, it would get gummed up. So once we put a propeller into the water and the water is clear, it pushes us along. And so it's still perpendicular to the ground, but the motion is perpendicular to the rotation. So we see a direct correlation there. Now, interestingly, when we go up into the air with an airplane, instead of putting the fan at the back, we put the fan at the front. And so that rotation pulls us along. But the motion is still perpendicular to the rotation. And if this seems very simplistic, it's meant to be. Because there's a lot of new knowledge seekers who don't understand the relationship between motion and rotation. And then we have this anomaly where we roll along the ground. We're still perpendicular to the ground, but we're rolling along on the ground. Well, we've resolved this anomaly. We created motors. And these motors turn an axle, and this axle is the input rotation and is perpendicular to the motion. So the output motion, such as the wheel, is aligned with the rotation. And this is very handy because we can also attach a steering wheel, and so we can guide this motion. And so we've been able to drive vehicles on the ground. Vehicles all shapes and sizes. But we run into another anomaly. If we are on a slope on the ground, we don't need a motor to move. There is no perpendicular input rotation. There's only the output motion, and that is aligned with the rotation. And if you don't put the parking brake on, You never know what could happen to that vehicle at the bottom of the hill. And then we have this other spinning along on the x-axis. We're still perpendicular to the ground, but we're spinning 360 degrees. And so we introduced a diameter, a radius, and a circumference, and pi, which not only determined the circle, but it determined the sphere. And yet pi is still involved. That little piece of pie that we're still looking for. And so we find that whether it's the surface of the sphere or the volume of the sphere, pi is still involved. And so we have these 2 feeding dimensions and 3 feedback dimensions. And since we're the observers, we're in the 4th dimension. And here we are, we're only talking about the x-axis dimension, the 1st dimension. And so now we see that we have so many different ways to relate to that, that maybe that 1st dimension has many other alternative points of view. So it's still 1 dimension, but we have to take into account another dimension. But it's the same dimension. So it's a different point of view of that same dimension. And how many different points of view can we introduce? Well, this is the key point. This is the springboard to our future understanding. And so we'll have to get into that in the new year. But right now we have to deal with this soccer ball transmission dilemma, because a soccer ball is a sphere. And so it can roll forward, it can roll sideways, it can bounce up and down, it can do all sorts of things. And so we see that there's a perpendicular motion combined with a perpendicular rotation. And fans all over the world hang on emotionally to the outcome of their favorite team. And it doesn't matter if it's a professional or an amateur team. The interaction is the same, and the dilemma is the same. And so we'd like to practice the skills, and if we achieve very good skills, maybe we go from amateur to professional. Well, I never got a chance to do that, but we had a transmission dilemma, and we like to practice. And so we would go in the wintertime into indoor gyms, and we like to have physical exercise. But sometimes these exercises became physical displays of machismo. And so what happens is we would play these games, and we had a little net. You see the little net in the back with the arrow? And what happens there, of course, is that nobody wants to play goal. So we all decided to take turns, you see. So I'm going to finish off this session with 2 stories. You see, because the reason we didn't want to play in net is because there were 2 players, and we always wanted them on our team. But when they were on the other team, and when you went into goal, they would like to carry the ball as close as possible to you and kick it as hard as possible, thinking somehow that that ball is going to transmute through you and into the net. Well, one of them was a very, very poor player. And of course, he loved to kick the ball hard, because that was his skill. The only problem with that skill is he wasn't very accurate. So frankly, rather than standing in net and getting hit with the ball and having a red welt on your chest, you should kind of step aside and say, go ahead, hit the target if you can. And since he was a very poor player with very poor control, more often than not, he would miss the net. It was a very effective technique of goaltending, I must say, and with no pain. But there was another player, and he was very accurate. And the problem was that he loved taking the ball hard. And of course, we said, well, we all take our turns in net. He somehow skillfully avoided going in the net. And if we did kind of finally get him persuaded to go into the net, his stay was often very short. But the problem for the rest of us is that at the end of the session, we would all compare the red welts on our skin from his extremely hard kicks. So why am I saying this story? Well, if you recall, when we were talking about the hockey pucks and how the pucks would fly into the stands and spectators were getting hurt, the thing was that the slap shot would telegraph intention. And that was exactly the case with this one player that we had in mind, because he would telegraph his intention, and that intention was to impale you with his soccer ball. So you understand, we were just having a kick around, you know, just having fun for physical exercise. Now, I was an amateur player, but my father was professional. And one of the things he taught me was to never telegraph your intention. And I said, how can you do that? So a lot of coaches will tell you that you have to disguise your kick. Well, when you're planning a big slap shot or you're planning a big kick, it's very hard to disguise your kick. You're clearly sending a telegraph saying, I'm going to kick this as hard as I can, and I'm going to kick it now. So one of the things that I did learn, even though I was amateur, was because I had a lot of difficulty blocking my father's kicks. And so I had to learn a little extra. And I found that I got really, really good at blocking those kicks. And it didn't take much to telegraph that intention. And so professional players learned not to telegraph their intention. But there's another aspect to the telegraph that was more than just a kick, you see. Because I realized now that my dad was actually dabbling on the plasma science. Because he was very, very proud of the fact that he never missed a penalty shot. He was always the designated taker. Now, I can't verify that he's never missed one, but what happened before I was born, I was not a witness to, but after I was born and I watched him play, and no, he never missed a penalty shot. And I said, well, what's your secret? And he says, well, remember, you never telegraph your intention. Well, wait a minute, how do you do that? Why are you so successful and others are not so successful? Is there more to it than just disguising the kick? Well, he said, yes. you never finalize your intention prior to the kick. I said, what? You must be kidding. Why is that important? Well, he says a professional goalie can read your mind. Oh, I said, well, you know, now we're dealing in some really crazy stuff. No, no, no. He says, well, this is the whole skill. So if I predetermine my intention and the goalie reads my intention, he will manage to block the kick. And so he never determined his intention until as late as possible before he kicked the ball, not allowing the goalie any time to react. And I thought about this. And of course, I had difficulty blocking my dad's shots until I added this little skill to my tool set. I still had a hard time blocking his shots because I was an amateur. But when I played with other amateurs, this was really easy. And so I'm talking about this gentleman who would telegraph his intention where he literally wanted you to swallow the soccer ball. So what do we do? Well, remember we talked about the poke check, which is a skilled way to stop an attacking player in hockey. But it was certainly a dangerous way to block a slap shot because the flat blade would deflect the puck into the face of the defenseman. So with the advent of the curved sticks, this danger increased. But defensemen also introduced a curved blade, and that allowed them to deflect the puck into the stands with a spin and increased speed. And so the fans in the stands had to duck the puck. There were a lot of injuries. Why was he able to block it? Is because the players were signaling their intention. That is to slap the puck as hard as possible. And all he had to do was put his stick in front and deflect that puck. And that was an incredible skill. And when I seen that happen, I watched the reaction of the other players, and they didn't get it. They honestly didn't get it. Well, I got it. And I used this skill. And so when this player came to kick the ball at our goalie, I had plenty of time to get in there and block the kick. But it wasn't just my intention to block the kick. I also developed a skill to kick into the kick. Yeah, it doubled the speed. And I deflected the ball. I deflected the ball right into his face. And we had to delay the game while he recovered. No one wanted to admit anything, but all the players, his players and my players, had a quiet good day. And I still think of that today because it was kind of funny, but it didn't um, minimize the number of welts on my body, but it sure helped me forget the pain. And so all of us are wondering, is there a guiding hand? Well, in this case, the question is, was there a guiding foot? So let me tell you a second story. Because in that same gym, I was coaching 13-year-olds. And to understand rotation and motion, there was a special soccer ball dilemma, and this is the mastering of the half volley. We called it a drop kick. What it means is the ball has to bounce, and then you kick the ball on the bounce. So you literally add the energy of your kick to the energy of the bounce in the ball. And we'd all be in a circle around the gym, and we just do a half volley kick to each other. And this went on for about half an hour. And one of the players, being a 13-year-old, particularly, he was very short-tempered, and he was having difficulty mastering this. Now, those of you who have mastered it, this is a piece of cake, but when you're teaching someone, it's very hard for them to understand. And so he was getting very frustrated because the ball was bouncing off his shin, off his knee, off his thigh. It just wasn't going properly. He could kick a volley, but he couldn't kick a half volley. And it was a real problem. And he was really, really, really getting angry with himself, of course. And we were very careful not to tease him or criticize him because that would only throw gasoline on the fire. But he was losing it. And we just tried to calm him down and say, well, that's why we practice. The whole purpose of practice is to develop a skill. Well, that advice didn't last long. Unfortunately, he took a swing and he completely missed the ball. He did a 360-degree pirouette. And in that pirouette, he was getting very angry. And by the time he finished his pirouette, he seen the ball bounce up again, and he kicked it with fury. He really didn't care where it went. But the problem was that he aligned himself underneath the basketball net. And as luck would have it, the ball went perpendicular to the ground, straight up like a rocket, hit the edge of the backboard, and came down straight like a rocket. Kapow. He had to leave the practice session. Now, the good news is he developed a very strong kick. He developed a very accurate kick. And he learned how to do a half volley. But he learned something else. When you learn lessons in anger, It's not really good to have wishes in anger. And when you're talking about the intention and telegraphing your intention, and is there a guiding hand or maybe a guiding foot or maybe a plasma guiding? One of the lessons is the lesson of return to sender. We need to understand our man space and how to deliver peace on earth. We're in the post-November the 11th era in 2023, where we can have some choices how to seek that graceful space. That greater oneness transcending the limitations of nuclear science. After 517 Thursdays in a row, understanding the dimension of matter plasma, where we have the physicality and the plasmatic reality, and understanding that the physicality is part of the feedback process, and man is feedback dominant. That's the lesson. This is the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute Teachings on Plasma Science, welcoming all the beautiful knowledge seekers. Yeah, there's a world peace treaty. Sign it. Sign it with a pen. Sign it with your heart. Sign it with your soul. But sign it with intention, good intention, and telegraph that intention so that spacemen, snowbirds, and sports fans can find heaven through the transmission of perpendicular motion with the guidance and assistance of perpendicular rotation. The notion of the perpendicular motion is a daily gift of the universal celebration. Plasma science needs to continue to be delivered daily, not once a year, in exchange for peace on earth and goodwill to men. Welcome to the new outer space age. Thank you all for allowing me to present.
Well, thank you for covering the beautiful game, as Mr. Keshe likes to refer it. Are you saying that this guiding foot or guiding hand is the same as our soul guiding us in a way? I was trying to equate it into the teaching, and I'm thinking the soul is guiding us. It's our closest friend, and it is a scout, and it is a guide, I would say.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah, we can see it.
Well, I must admit now that, that was the extent of the plasma knowledge that my dad had. And I was quite impressed that, he had that point of view. But it's a business of telegraphing your intention. Where it's been dynamic for me has been in seeing when people tell the truth and people lie. When people tell you things that they want you to hear, they don't tell you what they mean. And can you see the words that they're saying? How can you see with your ears? And how can you hear with your eyes? There is a guiding hand. And there are lessons to learn. And we all learn them at different rates. So we have to kind of be forgiving, and unfortunately for that gentleman who received the feedback, it was by his own hand. But I had a intervention. But the player I was coaching did not have an intervention. He learned it on his own. And what's the difference? The difference is the first one never learned his lesson. He kept wanting to inflict pain on the goalies. Whereas the young player learned his lesson, and he learned his lesson very well. And he was a very deadly and accurate penalty taker. And I was very proud that I was able to teach him. But if it wasn't for his position under the basketball hoop, and I couldn't have organized it any better. I had no say in his positioning, and I would have never dreamt that that would be the result.
And this is probably why we're being prepared slowly. Slowly, we bring you into this process so we don't get hit in the head with the ball. I think we know what we're doing. Again, we equated that to the mountain climber or the young fella driving the car. Now that he's got his driver's license, he knows what about the road rules, everything. Sure he does, till you get out on the road and you find out all these things that you've never considered, all these interactions that didn't come through the class or your driving school and so on. So I think we're being brought in slowly to this process that we don't, it's probably for our own protection in so many ways.
Well, there is another thing that we want to point out here, is that we are not talking about something that is so exotic that, is beyond our reach. This is ever present in our daily life. It is ever present in all of our lives. So this is not something that we just kind of have to stop. Well, we're going to stop this world, okay, and we're going to stop the rotation of the planet, and we're going to stop all the events that are happening and all the celebrations and all the holidays. Now, you can't stop that. And so, as I said, many people, give you greetings and salutations and say, well, enjoy the holidays. Who are you talking to? Are you talking to the cancer? Are you talking to the war? Are you talking to the life? Are you talking to the sorrow? Are you talking to the grief? You're talking to the hurt? Who are you talking to? And where were you the other 364 days of the year? You always settle for the least? Why don't we just reverse the roles? Maybe today we should wish misery. And the other 364 days, wish peace on earth and goodwill to men. We don't even have to make that compromise. This should be a daily activity. We need to learn our lessons. And each of us has to own up to learning that lesson.
Yeah, that's another one of the lessons you say. We always go for the least, but man has to understand that everything man needs is free. And this is one of the parts we really haven't understood. If we understand it, the feeding is free. If we understand it, the travel is also free. And so isn't the wellness. But we have to learn to tap into these certain energies, but it's all free. May not be free at this moment to come into some of these sessions, but it's being developed to get to the point that it will be free for everyone to take advantage of it. So again, feel part of the development of the system as you join these monthly sessions. And apparently they're going to be much longer. So I think there'll be more work done in a shorter period of time, let's say, or in a longer period of time. But that's quite a long time to remain silent and just listen. But we'll get used to it. And especially as we start seeing the results. Would anyone like to come in and join the discussion? I'm not hearing anyone at this point.
It's a silent class today.
That's fine. That's part of the communication line. I know Mr. Kesh said we were going to have a knowledge seekers workshop where no one would do any talking. And we tried that, but I think they're going to try it again. There'll be some sessions offered. I don't know if it'll be announced in advance, but be ready. And keep an eye on your Zooms and Telegrams. I think we're ready to do it, but there may be a block with the system as well. In other words, some people, I know he's mentioned that in London, that some people are very close to achieving transmutation, but perhaps he doesn't want anyone to start before the timing is right. Until everything's been added in that needs to be added in. The same with the mountain climber. You think you're ready to face it, but when, as somebody said, when you get on that vertical cliff, now what do we do? So slowly, slowly, we're bringing everyone into this understanding of this transmutation process in energy dimension and as well as complete transmutation of the physicality. Again, this has been a mystery of the ages. Many people I'm sure have thought they could do it, but they didn't know how. And as Alex said, we're doing it every day. We call it a dream. We call it a daydream. We're in this dimension of consciousness in a way. And I think that's the part of the creator that's made in your image, or he's as you, this total dimension of consciousness, which doesn't have that physicality attached to it, but can manifest a physicality if you so desire it, or if you're comfortable in that position. So there's still a number of things to understand about it, but I think we all feel we're getting closer and closer as the weeks and the months go by. But again, it's a mystery of the ages to unravel these understandings that you are the creator and you can move as the creator moves. This has always been blocked, no matter who we talk to. You're just dreaming. Can't be real, or we would have seen so many have done it. but apparently there's only been a few. And even after
Mark, have
billions
you ever
of
played
years.
soccer?
Go ahead.
Have you ever played soccer?
No, I was a football fella.
What are the odds of you kicking a soccer ball and hitting the edge of the backboard?
Happens more often than the ones that go into the net. Oh, you mean as far as the basketball backboard? I thought you meant the frame around the netting.
No, the edge, you know, of
Yeah.
course you can hit them. You know, the backboard is the size of a barn door as far
Yeah,
as professional
yeah, but you
basketball
hit
players.
the edge just right and it returned faster than it was sent. Yeah, we've seen some of these things.
How many times do you think you'd have to kick the ball?
Yeah, right, 1,000.
So that was a very special lesson.
I was going to say lesson as well. So again, there's a lot of understanding of how to operate in the universe as well. This is part of the, not just the ethos, but as he said a couple workshops ago, how to actually, you know, are you going to let your dog urinate on the lamppost, or are, you know, there's so many things, different protocols we need to understand, and we will. There's no problem. I think the universal community is quite anxious to interact with us, and some of us are a little bit apprehensive about interacting with them. But now that we understand the universe is peaceful, there shouldn't be a problem with it. And we know that a superior being never abuses an inferior being, if there is such a thing, or the ones, let's say, with more knowledge don't abuse the ones with what you would consider less knowledge. So I think it's quite a friendly, accommodating place if you're in the correct behavior. And many of us will talk about this. I think we'll bring back stories about what we've seen and experienced. It'll probably give the others the impetus to do it, to want to see a different dimension and understand some of their capabilities. All right, anyone else want to step up, step in, explain something, ask a question? And I thought Marie had put something in here about the three wise men. I'll just share the screen for a moment. And of course, they're still carrying the physical gifts. And this is a very nice point to open up a conversation, I think, with people. If you're near a nativity scene, or everybody knows about the three wise men and the gifts to the Christ child and so on, but you can explain what these gifts actually are, that what was missed and probably continues to this day to be missed by the majority of Christians. And this is the thinking good, the speaking good, and the doing good. And you can't put that into a jar or into a flask or into a container. It's something non-tangible in a way, but these are the three gifts of the three wise men. And we're privileged to know those gifts, where most think it's just the giving in the matter state, but it's much, much deeper than that. That's why they call them wise men.
Well, I have another funny story.
Go right ahead.
In grade 3, our class was used to enhance the nativity scene in our school.
It was used to do what?
Our class was used to enhance the nativity scene in our school.
Enhance, okay.
Well, you know, so someone would have to, you know, represent, you know, some of the people in the nativity story, and, you know, I mean, we're not talking about the camels or the goats or anything like that. We're talking about the people.
So you were one of the 3 wise men.
I was one of the 3 wise men, yes. And so there was incense, frankincense, and myrrh. And, you know, I was 8 years old. You think I knew what that was?
Could hardly
And
say it.
well, I learned how to say frankincense because that was mine. Yeah, had a paper mache cape, all duded out, you know, just like you see in the picture here. I didn't know what it meant. It was, you know, I guess it was kind of a fun thing to do.
Yeah, it was commercialized. Obviously, this is where many of the stores make most of their profit. 80, 60, 70% of their profit is made at this season. So the giving of gifts was moved into the business understanding of it. And that's why people kind of feel bad if they don't have a gift to give, or they didn't get the right gift and all these things, and I have to get a gift for this one. Why not give the gifts to yourself and then spread them? And people will, you can explain to them what these gifts are. Again, it's been hidden from Christianity from the beginning.
As I mentioned before, this was a particularly difficult thing for me because after paying for extra billing for cancer treatment for 8 years, we came to that last Christmas where we had no money for gifts. We had hardly enough money for food.
Yeah.
And we just had to say, well, if we were going to pay for surgeries, or if we were going to enjoy the gifts of Christmas, and we were forced to make a choice, Christmas lost. Christmas lost. And that was a tough lesson. But it was, in hindsight, it was a very good lesson, because the reason we were spending the money, even though we were, either way, we were wasting money in hindsight, you know, because the money you spend on those gifts is long forgotten. That the money spent on the surgery was ill-gotten. When they asked us what was the surgery for, and the running joke, of course, which wasn't very funny, was to pay for the trip to the tropics, or a new Cadillac, or the doctor's wife wants a mink coat. But those jokes ended up being the truth. And then I did get the gift. I got the gift, and it was only 10 minutes down the road. And within 2 months, the cancer was gone. We're still talking about it today. Where's the progress? Where's the technological progress? We still want, you know, peace on earth and goodwill to men. We keep dropping the ball.
But these three gifts, if you can internalize them, they're gifts to you in a way. They're a protection from many of the fields you may get into or create problems for yourself. I think this is a huge shielding if you can, and only you can open this up. No one else can force you to think good or to speak good or to do good. But these are the gifts that really were given to humanity, not just Christ. So it's been hidden from us, but Mr. Kesh has a way of opening up certain books at certain times, and I think he has a lot more books to open. As he said, he will return the stones of the Vatican to the Colosseum. And I never realized how many of these temples or modern day, let's say, churches or other facilities were built on older temples of Mitra. We didn't realize. And again, the shorter days and the longer nights or the longer days and so on, this was never brought into the discussion whatsoever about man walking out of the darkness of his own understanding. And these are the gifts that are being brought at this time of light, the season of the celebration of the light. It's enlightenment of you. And realizing, as he said, who you are, and that religion, there's no place or no point of it other than to abuse the man for a lack of knowledge. So this is the time we're opening it up, but it's opened up all year, not just at this time of the year, if you want to receive these gifts. Just the way I'm seeing it. Anyone else want to make a comment on these gifts being given by the three wise men from Persia?
I just want to take this time to thank everybody for allowing me to continue these presentations, and I'm hoping you're enjoying these little trips. We are all challenged greatly, not only to bring peace on earth and goodwill to man, but also to teach, because we are all teachers. We don't need to have a t-shirt with, emblazoned with the words teacher on it. We're all part of the whole process. We're all equal. And so thank you so much. And let's all be wishing for greater success. Thank you.